This is the second part of the story of Joseph. So do you remember Joseph's brothers really didn't like him and they showed a lot of broken love. Do you remember they put him into the hole? But then they changed their mind and they sold Joseph for some money. And then he was a slave and Joseph was taken back to Egypt. And Joseph was a slave for a man called Potiphar. And very sadly, Potiphar's wife decided to tell lies about Joseph that got Joseph into trouble. And so he didn't live with Potiphar anymore. He got taken to prison. Now, do you remember Joseph was able to tell all about dreams and what dreams meant? Well, whilst Joseph was in prison, he helped people to understand their dreams. And so the guards, they knew that Joseph had something very special about him, that he could explain what dreams meant. And at this time, the king, who was called Pharaoh, he was having some dreams and he didn't understand what they meant. And so one of the guards said, I know a man called Joseph who's in prison and he can understand dreams. And so the king sent for him at once. And you know, Joseph helped the king to understand what his dreams meant. The king had had dreams that said that there was going to be 7 years where there'd be lots of harvest, lots of food, and then 7 years where there'd be none. And so Joseph said they must store up the food in sacks whilst there was plenty, so that there was plenty of food for when all of the food had run out, when it was the time for the drought, which means there'd be no water so the crops wouldn't grow. And so this is exactly what they did in Egypt. In Egypt, the Pharaoh was so pleased with Joseph, he became his best friend. And Joseph became an important person in the kingdom, and he would have important jobs to do. And everybody really respected Joseph because he could help to understand their dreams. Now, of course, when the time of the famine came, where there was no food, in Egypt they had plenty because they'd stored it up in their sacks. But back at home, where Jacob, Joseph's father, and his brothers were living, in the land of Canaan, they'd run out of food and they were stuck. And so what they did is they decided that they would go with all that they had all the way to Egypt and beg for some food, because they knew that the people in Egypt had food and they needed some in order to stay alive, because they had nothing at all. So they went all the way to Egypt, and oh my goodness, when they got there, they saw Joseph. And you know, Joseph was really kind. Joseph didn't show them broken love, and he could have done, because they'd sold him. They'd thrown him down the hole, and then they sold him. But Joseph didn't do that. Joseph showed love. Joseph was a man who had a lot of love in his heart to give. And you know, the brothers were very sorry, and they said sorry to Joseph, and Joseph forgave them, and Joseph invited them to come and live in Egypt with him. And they also sent for Joseph's father, and can you imagine how happy Jacob was to see that his son, his favourite son, had not been killed after all. Wow. Do you know, what an amazing story. Joseph had a really hard time. He was first of all rejected by all of his brothers. He was beaten up and thrown into a hole. He was sold as a slave. Then Potiphar's wife lied about him and he was put into jail. And then finally he became the Pharaoh's best friend. And everything worked out really well. God had taken care of Joseph, and Joseph had helped all of the people in the land of Egypt, and he'd helped to save his family. He showed a lot of love. And of course God kept his promise, didn't he, to look after Joseph, even though some really tough things happened to Joseph. I wonder if we ever feel like Joseph, maybe some unfair things happen to us. I wonder if we're always ready to say that we forgive people for the broken love things that they show. I wonder if we're always ready to show love to others.